Dobry wieczór, nazywam się Błażej Hrabkowicz. To ostatni dzień Octopus Film Festival w Gdańsku. Kolejny gość z nami, reżyser konkursowego filmu The Bloodhound, Patrick Picard. Hello, Patrick. Nice to see you. Nice to hear
Hi.
you.
Hi. I understood the bloodhound in there.
And your name, I guess.
And my name,
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah, I just introduced you that you are the director of the Bloodhound. The Bloodhound is in the main competition, of course, on Octopus Film
Okay.
Festival. Great to have you. You're in LA under strict
Yeah.
lockdown, so it was
Yeah.
impossible to get you here. But
Right.
yes, but we're glad you're with us. I hope you are staying sane despite the situation.
Sane. Yes.
That pause was really disturbing, but given the fact that The Bloodhound is also really a disturbing film in many ways, that figures.
Well, it's incidentally become sort of appropriate for lockdown. You know, there's some weird sort of thing happening. Zeitgeist. I don't know.
Yeah. Because let's say that The Bloodhound is about a guy who answers a call from a friend, and the friend
Yeah.
is staying under self-imposed lockdown, let's say, in his house, and he comes to his friend. He arrives, and strange things are begin to happen. My first question would be about Edgar Allan Poe. Because when I
Yeah.
was watching your film, The Falls of the House of Usher really came to my mind because I'm a big Edgar Allan Poe fan. I read all of his stories, and for me, he's one of the masters of the horror genre. So was it a conscious source of inspiration for you, Edgar Allan Poe?
Yeah, it was because what happened was I was just sort of like sitting around trying to get ideas one day, and I like sit in front of my bookshelf, and I looked up, and I had a like a sort of anthology of Poe stories, and I was like, I'll just try. And I haven't even actually read that much Poe. I had it because I got it from my grandfather, and so I got it down, and the first story in it was The Fall of the House of Usher. And I read the first 2 pages, which is essentially just like the setup of going to a house of an old friend. And it had like such a great sort of like atmosphere just in the first sort of like couple pages. And actually I didn't keep reading. I just put down the book, and I started getting all these my own ideas. And then, like months went on, and I started getting my own ideas that related to the first couple pages of that book. Later on, I read the whole thing, but so then it ended up being kind of an adaptation, but it's a very, very unfaithful, sort of perverse adaptation of it, But I like that story of the Poe stories because it doesn't end in any sort of very clear absurdity. Like, for instance, you could have a Poe story that has a really beautiful setup of like a double murder. There's been a woman and her daughter have been murdered, and all the doors are locked, and it's like this great mystery, and somehow the daughter's been shoved up the fireplace, and and your mind is going like, and then at the end of the story, you find out it was an orangutan, an ape that killed him, and you're sort of like, all right, okay, it was an ape, but like
You're not convinced by that ending, I take it.
no, I don't like that. I like the mystery that was set up, and then the answer to it is no good. So at the end of this story, there's no answer. It's like these deaths occur, but they're like almost willed by the characters themselves, and then you don't get an explanation really. It's like lots and lots of room to like kind of come up with ideas. And so that was like something I could keep going back to, was that little Poe story, but then, did my own thing with my own little, dreams in it. And
Did you also? I take it that you also, when you read the Fall of the House of Usher, you also thought that this is a story which can be easily set in the contemporary reality, because of course the house in which your film takes place is very modern and
Yeah.
very claustrophobic in its modernity. So this was, I guess, you thought that this is a story which is really suitable for contemporary setting.
Yeah. So like it's just old friends, you know. So like old friends are have been going on for a long time, and will, you know, hopefully go on. And so it could be at any time. And I'm here in Los Angeles. I grew up in Virginia, which is where those stories ostensibly take place, those Poe stories. And out there, you could have some homes that are Gothic homes, or they're, you know, colonial, and those have a particular feel that we've seen 5 million times in movies before, which is good. It's great, but you've sort of seen it. And here in Los Angeles, it's a newer place relatively. And one thing it has that's really great is during the beginning of the 20th century to the middle of the 20th century, so many great modernist architects were building, mostly from Austrian architects. And so that house that the story takes place in is a house by an architect named Richard Neutra, who was a big deal in Los Angeles. He was one of Frank Lloyd Wright's students. And I sort of thought to myself, well, we've seen this kind of story take place a lot in a Gothic setting. And I was like, what about not doing that? Here, I like the feel of these modern homes because a neighborhood I grew up in had the feeling of some of these modern homes. And so to me, that said, that had more of the sort of nostalgic feel than an old creepy Gothic home. And then, whatever, there are 1,000,001 reasons why it should be that house, but
yeah, but you're talking about the nostalgic film because of the personal reasons, but also I think that these modern houses and the modern house you depict in the film has this sort of very cold, sterile quality to it,
yeah.
and very not very personal, with no personal touch. And I think that this is a very chilly. This can be a very chilly setting to a horror film, or and also for the drama that the JP, your character, is facing, his sort of inner demons.
Yeah, there's something about that sort of blank quality to the home that sort of like, it sort of matches the rest of the story, matches the characters and everything, because you don't know exactly where to put your feet down. There's no sort of friendly, you don't look around and see a lot of things that you recognize.
It's not very cozy, isn't it?
No, it's not cozy. It's sort of like those kind of homes were built with a lot of ideas in mind. They're very conceptual. They have all sorts of ideas of how you're supposed to live, and stuff that maybe has aged. Some of it has aged well, some of it hasn't aged so well. And so there's sort of that feeling in the story of like, maybe some ideas that haven't really worked out,
Yeah, and also the way you film the space, the way you create the space of this house is really interesting for me, because somehow this house is supposed to be very comfortable. The design is supposed to be like very, it's and especially home should feel comfortable and safe. But at the same time, you film it in a way that it's really, not only is it tight, but you don't feel at ease as an audience in this sort of space. So I guess this was your idea from the beginning, to put camera in such place that can allow you to film the space in this way.
Yeah, and it was a little bit um, of a problem because, well, I'll say the great irony is that that house is actually very, very beautiful to be in when you're there. And when you open up all those curtains, the outside comes in. It's sunlight. It's like super beautiful. It's great. And what we did was just closed all the curtains, and automatically the mood sort of changes. But the filming of it is the spaces are sort of tight, and so you had to use very wide lenses. And then, but I don't like how wide lenses will oftentimes bow, they'll take the verticals and they'll bow them. And so me and the cinematographer had to go and test a bunch of lenses that wouldn't bow. So we found all these old Panavision wide lenses that they would keep the verticals. So you have a very strict, nice, almost Japanese vertical in there. And then, but you have a wide sort of what becomes like an objective view of these little rooms. And somehow making them bigger makes you feel smaller in them. It's weird, but these are all dictated by the feelings of like the characters inside the story, and then of course by the physical limitations of actually having to shoot in that house.
Yeah. In what way did you think that this lenses and this way of shooting you're now talking about served the story? What kind of feelings and the inner sort of demons of the characters did you think this kind of space and this kind of style would enhance?
Well, you needed them to be in relation to the house. So if you were to go in there with a 75 millimeter lens or something and shoot medium shots and close-ups all the time, you wouldn't have an atmosphere as much. I mean, you could figure out one and have it sort of moving in the background somehow, but this was always putting people in relation to the structure, and you wanted the structure to be a character as well. Especially in the Poe story, it's a big-time character. And in this, you want the house to be in relationship to the JP character, and you want the Francis character to feel oppressed by the house. Now, if you were shooting all medium shots and close-ups, you wouldn't feel the weight of this house anymore. And so that was a big reason for having this kind of feeling of often seeing the characters, their bodies in relation to the space.
What kind of, because you just said that you sort of filled the Edgar Allan Poe structure, the story, with your own dreams, with your own personal things. What was the most important thing for you with these characters, with this story? I'm talking about your own personal ideas that you used this Edgar Allan Poe structure to tell us about.
Yeah, it was this thing of like the old friend that you haven't seen in a long time, and the terms that the terms of that relationship have changed completely. Like I always give this example. Say you're 9 or 10 years old, and your buddy calls you up and says, "Hi, would you like to come over and play?" And you go, "Okay, great, I'll come over and play. I'll run over to your house and play." Say you're 9 years old. Then go to your 30 years old. Your same buddy calls up and he goes, "Hi, would you like to play?" All of a sudden the meaning has changed.
Yeah, all of a sudden that's pretty weird.
It's strange, and I kept having these dreams where I would be in a house with a very old friend of mine and his little brother, and here we were in this house, and we're trying to, I guess, like, be like we were, but we're 30 years old or whatever. And so I really liked that, and so I dug into, in the Poe story, it doesn't really dig much into the friendship. The narrator is there mostly just to observe the eccentricities of the usher
You
character,
mean the Edgar Allan Poe
in the
story?
Edgar Allan
Yeah.
Poe. And so in this, I went, okay, well, what I'll do more of is sort of play with the this relationship between the two characters. This would you like to come over and play sort of
Yeah,
thing.
it creates just like you said, when you're 30 years old or whatever. This kind of behavior seems weird to you because a lot have changed, and also it can create just very awkward atmosphere.
Yeah.
And awkwardness is, of course, often is the stuff of comedy, but also can be very disturbing. And I thought that in your film you tried to do both, because there is this scene with sleeping bags, which is really, really funny in a way.
Yeah. Well, that's like for sure. It's supposed to be funny, It's like, but a kind of funny that is it's not a very comfortable funny. You don't get to sit back and relax and just laugh at it. You can laugh at it, but you don't know what the terms are. It's just like, now you come over and he says, do you want to play? And he's 30 years old. You don't know what the terms are anymore. Now you're adults that have had sexual experiences, and now you're with this guy and you don't know where you stand in that way. What does it mean to like roll around on the floor with this, friend of yours? And, so it's funny, but it's also, you don't know what to do with it. So it can easily like slip into something kind of scary or strange. But the sleeping bag thing came from my editor on the film told me that he used to have what he called worm fights with his little brother. And then like when he told me about this, I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard of. These two sleeping bags coming across a room and
fighting.
Yeah, so neat.
Yeah, it looks funny, but it's also a bit disturbing, and I think that's that's great. And also, the Edgar Allan Poe story was later on, when Freud happened and when psychology happened. It was interpreted in a way that the in your film the JP character and the Edgar Allan Poe character, the Roderick Usher, really suffered from paranoia, from anxiety, and so on. When Poe wrote that story, these terms were not present, but then of course it was called like that, and and I really felt that you moved into that direction, that this is the paranoia, the anxiety, and this sort of weird confinement is now something we really know about, but in your film it's still very disturbing.
I was going to say, like, how great was it when we didn't know what any of these things were? It's like, so when we don't have names for it, when you don't have names for it, there's way more like sort of depth in there. Something that exists, I think, in this story that's a little bit more explicit and maybe modern is that depression is named. And there's a sort of this thing that is being passed down through the family. There's a kind of depression, this darkness that's sort of named, and that's not so much in the Poe story. But yeah, exactly. Like in this story, people die and you don't know why. You're not told why they die. I like that mystery in those old stories. You never know what's wrong with people. People always have mysterious illnesses, and which is great. It sucks that we have names for it.
Yeah, but even though we have names for it now, and you mentioned that depression is mentioned in your film, still I felt that you maintained a bit of that mystery. That we're still not. I guess that was your idea, that we're still not sure what really happened.
Well, it's always and our ideas about these things are always changing and developing.
Yeah. So, but I'm also interested in the character of the sister, because she's sort of the main characters are of course Francis and JP, and she just shows herself in one or two scenes, but her
Yeah.
presence is felt. Like you feel that
Yeah.
Vivian is somewhere there. This is also, of course, in the sister is also in the woman is also in Edgar Allan Poe story. But I'm
Yeah.
interested in what was your idea for this character of her weird presence in this film.
You know, I like in the Poe story how there's something where the brother and sister share a kind of access to like an unconscious. They share an access to a kind of spirit, and maybe they're like different expressions of the same kind of spirit. And in this, you know, I did like the idea of having somebody felt in the house who you didn't see a lot. And that felt very dreamlike to me. In dreams, sometimes you'll feel a presence and you know like there's someone behind that door, but you don't know exactly who it is or what they're up to. And but then there was another thing, which is like you get visited by the sister at points. Oh, how do I say this? I'll tell you a little story, and then maybe you can try to apply it. So
Go on.
My editor had this thing happen. Apparently, I steal a lot of things from my editor, but he was living on a farm.
Say hello to him or her from us.
I will. Yeah, it's a fella named David Skorka, and he's, you know, actually a big, like we went to the AFI together, and he's a big part of, we've, you know, been developing trying to develop sort of editing language together for a while. And, you know, so he gets some credit, you know, for sure. But anyway, so he had this experience where he lived on a farm, and there was this guy who ran the farm. And one night David got some speakers from the house, and he set up these speakers and he was playing music really loudly. And this guy came in and he got so upset at David that he brought in the speakers from the house. And David had never seen this guy so upset before. And he felt embarrassed about it. He felt ashamed. And that night, David had a dream that the farmer came in and apologized. And he said, "David, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have reacted like that. It's not a big deal. Of course, you can play music whenever you want. You can use my speakers." And then David woke up and he thought, "Oh, gee, that's too bad. It was just a dream that this guy apologized to me." And David went into the kitchen to have breakfast, and suddenly everything was fine with the farmer. It was like they had this reconciliation, and everything was okay. The dream sort of still had an effect on the reality. It wasn't just a dream in a way. And so there's this kind of feeling with this sister that certain things are maybe communicated through the sister that might be partly being communicated by JP.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying, because in the film the border between dream and reality, fantasy and reality, is very blurry. It's like dreams spill over to the reality, and then Vivian becomes some sort of a medium, maybe even to convey some things that JP doesn't convey by himself.
Yeah. A medium is kind of a cool way to think about it. But yeah, the whole idea in there's sort of a cubist quality to consciousness and unconsciousness. Sort of like in Cubism, where they would take background and foreground, they'd bring everything up to the picture plane, and they'd have them occupy the same space. You start taking like waking and dreaming and having them occupy the same value. So nothing's just a dream and nothing's just a waking, you know.
I also wanted to ask you, the last thing I wanted to ask you is about the actors, particularly the actor playing JP, because he
Yeah.
has such a strong and weird presence, and his
Yeah.
face he is able to. I'm not sure if I will make myself clear, but he's able to express nothing and a lot at the same time. I don't know if you know what I mean, but he's really suited to this role. And I wanted to ask you about him and about the way you worked with him on this character.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. But that's Joe Adler. And he's a really good actor, and this was such a quick movie, and he doesn't get to do a lot of takes. We didn't get to do a lot of takes, I'd love to do 40 or 50 takes of something, but this is a movie where in the dailies it's sort of like 3 or 4 takes, and so he was doing a real good job of nailing things, but we were sort of creating the mood of the character as we went on, and he does have a quality to it that I really like, which is almost like in old movies, like in like a 40s Hollywood film, like a Billy Wilder sort of film or something, like he looks like a Joseph Cotton or something, like he's got this
Joseph Cotton is a great reference for him. Yeah.
yeah, and I really like that. He is both. He does have a lot of qualities in his face. He has it. You can feel like a child in his face, and feel an adult in his face, and it does work as this thing that's kind of not telling you exactly what's going on. But he's a very great technical actor. First of all, he's a very nice person who's not scary at all when you meet him, and so that's all performance. And he turns it on so quickly, and his voice is deeper in real life. So it's really funny, he'd be like, it'd be cut, and he's like, do you want me to do that quicker, or blah, 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 kind of thing. And he's real pro about it, And so a lot of the conversations were just sort of technical conversations, and I just sort of let him do things. But he got it. He got the kind of guy.
This was the conversation about The Bloodhound, the film from main competition during Octopus Film Festival. Thank you, Patrick, for agreeing to do this and for being with us. Patrick Picard, the director of The Bloodhound. Stay safe in LA, and I hope the lockdown is lifted and soon enough you'll be able to go to film festival and cinema in LA.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the festival there.
And have a nice day. Stay safe. Thank you for talking to us. Bye.
Bye-bye.